everyone to our Tuesday, June 1st afternoon only council meeting. We are always grateful for members of the public, council, and staff who give us the privilege of their time and share some time with us every council meeting. So we appreciate that. Before I call to order, I'm going to ask our reliable Assistant City Manager, Nat Rojanasethira, to explain how people can participate in our meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Clyde. There are two ways to participate in City Council meetings. One is to join directly on ZoomGov using the Zoom app on your computer or mobile device. And the second is to call into the meeting directly. To join our meeting on Zoom using your computer, smartphone, or telephone, please use the link or the phone number that is listed on the agenda. And you can find that agenda at isearchmonterey.org. And since the meeting is already started, it'll be under the recent tab. To join by telephone, you can dial toll-free 833-568-8864 and then enter the meeting ID. For this meeting, that ID is 161-025-5836, pound. And then when you're prompted to enter a participant ID, press pound one more time. Detailed instructions on how to use Zoom is available on our website at monterey.org/public meetings. To make a public meeting using the Zoom app, you can virtually raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. If you dialed in by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and then unmute yourself again by pressing *6. You must do both. Public commenters will be muted until it's their turn to speak. We'll be calling on each public speaker in the order of their hands raised. We ask that you stay within a 3-minute time limit that we've established for today's meeting, which we will show using a countdown timer at the bottom of the screen. Now, if you're connected live on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. This meeting is also being streamed live on YouTube with a 10-second delay, and then also on Comcast channel 25, which has a 90-second delay. And as always, we look forward to receiving public comment this afternoon. Back to you, Mayor Roberson.
Okay, thank you. Nicely done as always. And at this point, I will call the meeting to order, and our first item of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. I will give our renowned city clerk a moment. Oh, she beat me to it. Clementine has the flag on Colton Hall for us, so please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And speaking of our renowned city clerk, and another R word today would be rested, would you introduce the Caring City Council, please?
Yes, Councilmember Albert.
Here.
Councilmember Hoffa. Say it one more time. Well, we can see Councilmember Hoffa. I can't hear anything though. Well, I believe he's here. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Williamson.
Present.
And Mayor Roberson.
And I'm here as well. Our first item of business is public comments, and we have a 3-minute time limit. And this is an opportunity for people to share some thoughts, concerns, praise and adulation is accepted as well. And anything within the jurisdiction of the city of Monterey, please. I know folks do like to share a lot of things with us. We appreciate that. Will not be any discussion. Sometimes there's an occasional clarification because by the State Brown Act, since these items that will be brought to our attention right now are not on the agenda, we are prohibited basically from talking about them. Also would encourage people, if you have questions or need staff help, to reach out to the city at suggest@monterey.org. And suggest@monterey.org will allow the city to respond to you as well, and also leave a contact today or soon if you need some follow-up. So with that, we look forward to your participation. Nat, do we have some folks wanting to share some thoughts not on the agenda, non-agenda items?
We actually do not have any members of the public wishing to make comments on items not on today's agenda.
Well, I wish I'd known that before that introduction. All right, let's go right ahead then to the consent agenda. Were there any members of the public who had questions or comments about the consent that we know of?
No,
No,
none
all right.
reported to us so far, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion, and if not, roll call, please.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffa,
Yes, and just so you know, my internet's kind of unstable. That's why I'm going in and out sometimes. But yes,
Councilmember Williamson,
Yes.
Councilmember Albert,
Yes.
and Mayor Roberson.
Yeah, I'm here as well. And yes, I'm sorry. I got distracted there. All right. So good. Let's go ahead to our first public hearing. We have an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to deny a request to remove 508 Del Monte from the downtown area historic context statement and reconnaissance survey list. Our appellant is David Howe, the owner, and what we will be doing here is there is a process that we follow. In a moment, I'll ask if the council has had any ex parte communications. Simply means, have you talked to anyone outside of this meeting, which is perfectly fine. We just have to let everybody know that. We'll have a staff presentation, and it'll probably most likely be Kimberly Cole and Meg Clovis, and we can ask questions of our staff. The applicant and appellant in this case are both the same people. And it's my understanding Tony Lombardo will be making that presentation. We can ask questions. We'll go to the public comment, back to the applicant rebuttal, and then decision. So that will be the process. So the first thing would be to see if has anyone had any ex parte communication with the applicant or appellant.
Mayor, if I could, a little bit off topic here, but I would be remiss if I didn't say this now. If I could excuse myself from item number 7, I know we just approved the consent agenda, but that's within 500 feet of my house. So I just want to make sure that my name is not showing approval of that.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. So your the consent vote will note abstention.
Quick question, which item is that? Because I don't see an item 7 on the agenda.
Item 2.
Oh, item 2? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I guess I'm looking at the wrong. Yes, I am. Thank you, Mayor, for the clarification.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
on this item, item 5, you've asked if we'd had any ex parte conversations. I want to just say that I did talk to the attorney that's representing the property owner at 508 Del Monte last week for probably 5 or 8 minutes, and it was just to ask a couple questions. He reached out, so I think there was nothing that's not already presented in this staff work or will be presented tonight.
Okay, thank you for that. And we also know that this is let me find the correct term. Got to find that on my computer. A de novo hearing, was that the correct? In that basically means that even though the Historical Preservation Commission and the Planning Commission have reviewed this, we're looking at this de novo, meaning like new. So since those two groups have met, additional information is accepted. The council basically is acting like this is the first time this has been in process, even though it has not. So if you were wondering, that's if you hear new information, for example, the Planning Commission didn't have, that happens occasionally, but we're able to operate on new information. even if the planning commission or HPC did not have the opportunity to review it. All right, so with that,
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just a quick clarification. We're having some connection issues with YouTube. So some members of the public who aren't able to connect to YouTube are having an audio problem. And I've let our friends at AMP know because they have their connection between the Zoom to YouTube. So if I could just quickly share my screen, we have instructions here on the screen just for those who are watching. Obviously, they can't hear me speak, but due to issues with the YouTube connection, please join the meeting by telephone or directly using the Zoom link that's on the agenda. And they can call in. They can also join directly by clicking on that link. So we wanted to let everyone know since we're having those challenges.
all right, why don't you just leave that on the screen for a moment and give people an opportunity. And that was a good point, Nat, thank you. When I watch other city meetings or jurisdictional meetings, just as, not as a participant, but just as an observer, often it's really good to go to the agenda item, because if you click on the agenda, it takes you right to the meeting. All right, well, let's, we want to make sure that we're okay as far as this being an open public meeting as well. So as long as those glitches aren't jeopardizing that, we can continue. All right, Nat, you can remove your screen share. And at this point, we will go to our staff presentation. Hans, will you want to make the introductions, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you pointed out, the appeal will be presented by our Community Development Director, Kimberly Cole. She has prepared, I think, a presentation that is something like 10 minutes long, and will provide you with definitely the highlights of the issues at hand at the location at 508 Del Monte. And with that, I punt it over to Kim, please.
Mm-hmm. It's fun having lunch here.
Can everyone see my screen now? Great.
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. As the Mayor introduced, you will be considering an appeal this afternoon regarding 508 Del Monte Avenue and whether or not it should be retained on our reconnaissance survey list. The staff recommendation is that the City Council adopt a resolution and approve the appeal, which will remove the structure from our reconnaissance survey list. And as the Mayor mentioned, this is a de novo hearing. There is some new information that was not presented to the Planning Commission. Basically, one of the historic surveys, there's been supplemental historic review completed since both the HPC and Planning Commission reviewed the project in order to address some of the questions raised at those bodies. So just terms of background, the parcel is about 13,000 square feet. It contains a 1- and 2-story commercial building, and those buildings were constructed over a period of time. The original building, the Toffner building, was constructed in 1928. And there were a couple of additions also occurred to the property in 1961 and later in 61 and 69. And most commonly today, we refer to this as the French Laundry building. I do want to point out that these buildings basically doubled the size of the original 1928 structure. And you can see sort of the significance of those additions in this photograph. This is the view from Del Monte Avenue. There's the original 1928 building, and basically what's retained of that original building is what you can see from this photograph. And then to the side is the French Laundry structure. And just to explain to you our historic survey process, the City of Monterey is very proactive in its historic surveys. But the way that we've accomplished surveying the majority of our city is we have a reconnaissance survey program, which is also called a windshield survey. And it's meant to be broad brush. So we go through an entire neighborhood or district and we identify those properties where maybe further research needs to be completed to know whether or not they might qualify for historic designation or whether they should come off the list. So it's a broad brush survey and it's a windshield survey. And this concept of a windshield survey is actually founded in the US Department of Interior by the National Park Service, which is one of the guidelines that we follow. The HPC denied the removal of the building from the list. Their conclusion was that the facade appears original, including the stucco finish. They believed that the building retained integrity, especially the French Laundry portion of the building. We also received at least one letter in support of retaining the building on the site. Or not just retaining it, retaining the property on the survey list. And their feeling was that the windows and doors could be restored. And the Planning Commission had a very similar conclusion. And I think one of the poignant comments that I remember was from Commissioner Latassa, who was concerned that the surveys that they were reviewing had been paid for by the applicant, and there needed to be a more objective analysis completed. And so in fact, today we'll be presenting to you the analysis of 3 separate qualified historians, and all of them have concluded that the building does not qualify for historic listing. The third historian, Meg Clovis, was contracted by the city of Monterey. So the applicant, there's some distance, if you will, between the applicant and the actual analysis. And so what's the purpose of today in the appeal? What is the framework in our municipal code? And basically the city council can affirm, reverse, or modify the action of any appealed item. So you have full discretion in front of you. I'm going to take a moment just to briefly talk about eligibility. Under the California National Registers, there are basically 3 key criteria for designation. One is that the building had some link to important events, patterns, and trends of construction, that there's some person associated with the site that's important, or that maybe it's important because of its design and construction. No matter which of the criteria that it's eligible under, the building also needs to exhibit integrity, meaning that it hasn't changed so radically that it doesn't qualify for listing anymore. And so the first survey reviewed by, or actually prepared by Kent Seavey, and it's that more intensive survey, so to actually determine significance versus a windshield survey. Based on his research, he did not find any significant events, and the businesses that were there didn't really contribute to broad patterns of Monterey's history. So that's different than, for example, maybe the sardine industry or buildings related to our fishing industry. The laundry building didn't have connections necessarily to broad patterns of Monterey's history. There were also no notable persons connected with the property. And so the question then becomes, is the building eligible for its design and construction? And his conclusion was that it did not qualify, that the 1961 additions and the altered facade of the 1928 design, which you can see there's different windows and doorways than originally existed, basically sufficiently compromised the building's historic appearance by both the remodel and addition. So Mr. Seavey's work was peer reviewed by Dr. Kirk, and Dr. Kirk concluded that the building clearly lost its historic integrity and that it's not eligible for listing on the California or national registers, which are also the criteria used by the city of Monterey to determine designation. The third analysis, which is really the new analysis that's being brought to the table, was by Meg Clovis. She provided some more detail about the property and basically concluded that the Toffner building is not associated with the important themes of Monterey's history, such as the sardine industry or military expansion or Japanese settlement, that many other buildings in this area have been determined to be significant. And she actually agreed with the conclusions of Mr. Seavey and Dr. Kirk that the building do not meet these criteria. Under the Criterion 3 for design and construction, there's always discussion about which type of architecture does this building represent, and that it must be significant at least under one of the following requirements. Does it embody distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction? Does it represent the work of a master, or does it possess high artistic value? And basically the conclusion of the analysis is that there was some discussion whether it's Spanish colonial revival or Spanish eclectic style, but her concluding statement is that both classifications are basically considered interchangeable, and it ultimately has no bearing on the structure's significance, whether it's one classification or another. And the clear conclusion was that these buildings do not exhibit those characteristics with Spanish colonial revival or Spanish eclectic style that would create a historically significant building. Integrity, that was that other concept. There's basically 7 aspects of integrity that are outlined, I believe, by the National Park Service. And several of those are not exhibited by this property, including design, materials, workmanship, and the feeling or association. And so Ms. Clovis also concludes that the property does not qualify for the national or California registers. So in summary, we've had 3 qualified professionals conclude the property does not qualify to be eligible for listing on either of the historic registers. And our recommendation is to approve the appeal, which will delist the property from the city's reconnaissance survey list. I do note that Meg Clovis is a qualified historian, and she's available by telephone and can elaborate on any technical questions you might have. She has the last 3 digits of 574 with her phone number if the council has questions. That's all.
All right. That's all you got. Thank you for your remarkable report. We appreciate that very much. And are there any council questions at this point before we invite the applicant / appellant? And there we go. Yes, Councilmember Allen, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm wondering if Meg Clovis, if she's on the line, could speak to this. So the proximity to kind of our Japanese area of settlement is close. And I'm wondering, do we know if Japanese residents from that neighborhood worked in the laundry?
We've unmuted Meg Clovis and allowed them to speak. We just ask that they unmute themselves first. And unfortunately, we can't do that on our side. Meg, if you could please unmute yourself, and you do that by dialing *6. There we go. Welcome.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and council members.
Good afternoon.
I was going by for historical information by Mr. Seavey's report, which was quite thorough, plus the context statement, which talks a lot about the history of that area. There is no evidence that there were Japanese employees at that laundry. And in fact, it was in the context statement, the Pearl Street district, that was identified as the area of Japanese settlement. And the 508 Del Monte is outside of that area.
Okay,
Are there any other questions?
Any more questions at this point?
guess
Councilmember Dan?
Go ahead, Alan. Go ahead, finish your question.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm wondering about how we created those demarcations, because it's pretty close, the Pearl District. I mean, you can walk there pretty quickly. So I wonder if Meg or somebody could speak to that. Like, why is that not in it? Was there really no connection between Pearl Street and that particular area? It seems pretty close.
I personally was not involved in this context statement, in the development of the context statement. Perhaps Ms. Cole has some knowledge of how the areas were drawn up.
Okay, unmute. There you go.
Sorry about that.
No, we all do it.
So the city hired Architectural Resources Group to prepare the downtown historic context statement. And basically what they did through that effort is they identified properties that might have been associated with the Japanese heritage in that area. And obviously our two cornerstone properties are the Presbyterian Church, which has been designated. We've also designated a residential structure where I believe there was a Japanese diver that lived in that structure, sort of right around the corner, and the Japanese American Citizens League building, which is on the other side of the park. So we know, and there are several other properties that have been identified as maybes that we need to do further research to see the full extent. This property has never been associated, at least through the historic research to date, with the Japanese community. And perhaps Kent Seavey's also on the line. He might be with the Lombardo and Associates. He was for Planning Commission. And Kent has a fairly broad understanding of the Japanese history in that particular area.
Okay, why don't we suggest this, that during the applicant appellant presentation, that if Mr. Seavey is there, he could further elaborate. And then meanwhile, Councilmember Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. So what is the boundary of the reconnaissance survey list? Is that all of downtown, or what's the actual boundaries?
It's basically, it is the same boundary as our downtown specific plan, because as we were preparing that plan, we wanted to understand the implications on potential historic districts. So on the very uppermost end, it's basically Van Buren Street. And then it goes to Del Monte Avenue all the way to Lake El Estero. And then I believe it cuts through basically on Fremont Street. So it's a fairly large planning area.
So this particular property is not a standalone inside that particular reconnaissance survey, meaning as they drove by and looked at all the properties, they said, oh, that one looks like a historic building. We need to put that in the reconnaissance survey list. That did not happen. That's not a part of the reconnaissance survey.
So the reconnaissance survey list, it sort of did happen that way. So let me just explain. A reconnaissance survey list is a historian driving through the neighborhood, doing some research and saying, these are the ones that need further research. That's all it means on the reconnaissance level. In fact, they have a designation, I think, of 7N, saying we need to go back and look. And so what that's done for us from a planning perspective, if I compare it like to the new Monterey historic survey, which I think we had like 800 properties surveyed, I think only 10% of those required additional research. So it gives us a very comprehensive look at the area, so we don't miss any properties. And then to actually become designated or to go to that next level, the city code requires an intensive historic survey. And actually that's the same that happens for the California National Registers. You go from a reconnaissance, which is broad brushed, there may be something to this property, we need to go back and look, versus intensive is supposed to be a final conclusion on whether or not that property is potentially eligible. And so Mr. Seavey prepared an intensive survey. The conclusion was that it was not eligible. And now that has since been reviewed by two other historians that have agreed with that conclusion.
Thank you. So Mayor, I have one other question and then I'm done. So tonight we approved under the Mills Act, West Franklin Street, 940 West Franklin Street. And it didn't seem like it came to the same level that we're requiring this property, the three different areas. I don't know. Can you just tell me the difference between the property that now and this property, the West Franklin Street, and why would West Franklin Street be considered historic and the other property would not?
So that's why we rely on the architectural historians to provide us that perspective. And basically with the West Franklin property, the decision is that there was enough character defining features that it still qualified. Other structures, the outside of the building may not be as important. And that actually happened in Cannery Row a lot, or if a particular group was associated with the building, like the Japanese or something like that, where we're trying to tell a broader story based on cultural migration patterns or something like that. There may be other reasons why the building is significant. And I know the HPC really struggles with this. When they review properties, they're reviewing what's changed. And there's pretty robust discussion at the HPC, which ones they think qualify and which ones they think don't. I would say it's more of an, it's based on the criteria I presented to you, but that's why we have qualified architectural historians making recommendations.
So it doesn't necessarily have to check off the boxes of the 3 criteria. It could be just one. The architecture is historic, and that's the reason why we keep the building. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone famous lived there. It could just be the building itself.
It could be one of the 3, and then it also has to have the 7 aspects of integrity.
Okay, great. That answers my question. Thank you, Kim. Thanks, Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Any more questions? All right, let's go ahead then, please, to the applicant appellant. And we are welcoming Mr. Lombardo, I believe, and possibly Mr. Seavey, because one of the questions was for Mr. Seavey was the influence, cultural and proximity of the Japanese community and the usage of this building by the Japanese community as possible employees, just what that connection is, if there is any. So are we ready to go ahead then to our applicant appellant? You're on, Nat.
Yep, and we've unmuted our Mr. Tony Lombardo with the last 3 digits, 574. Mr. Lombardo, if you could please unmute yourself by dialing *6. We can then hear you on audio. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and welcome. And too bad we can't see you, but you're coming in loud and clear on the audio.
Yeah, I'm very sorry you can't see me because I wore a suit and a tie for you this afternoon. I'll be brief. I'd like to thank the staff for their excellent presentation. I think there's no fault or blame to be ascribed to either the HRB or the Planning Commission. The applicant, this is before I was involved in the application, had Mr. Seavey and Dr. Kirk on their behalf make the application, or provide the information. It appeared that the commission and the HRB felt uncomfortable without an independent, if you will, review or analysis prepared. So after the Planning Commission decision, as staff mentioned, the city then hired Meg Clovis, who's the very highly esteemed former county historian for the county of Monterey, to peer review the work that was done by Mr. Seavey and Dr. Kirk. And as staff stated, she concurred. Just briefly, the report's done based on what's called a windshield survey, or you might call it a drive-by survey, just looking at the facade of a building and saying, well, does that look like something that could be old or historic? Clearly, part of this building, a portion of the building, is quite old, or at least early 20th century. And then, as Kim mentioned, you have to do a deeper dive into whether it qualifies. As Ms. Clovis very aptly described in her report, this building does not qualify as a historic structure because it does not embody any type of distinctive style or characteristic. It doesn't represent the work of a master. It does not contain high artistic value, and all 3 historical consultants described the lack of what they call architectural integrity in the building because of the various and numerous alterations that have occurred over the period of its existence. The question that Councilmember Hoffa asked about the association with the Japanese neighborhood, predominant Japanese neighborhood next door. Kent is here with me, and he can answer that. But in a nutshell, you know, as an industrial area, it wasn't an occupation that the Japanese immigrants were particularly drawn to, because their main occupation was fishing in Monterey during the early 20th century. But Kent, if you can holler into the mic, then you can elaborate.
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor and honorable members of the City Council?
Yes, we can, Kent. Nice to hear from you. Go for it.
Del Monte Avenue was a line from early on of industrial activities. You had a large steam plant that supplied the energy for the electric railway that ran up through the city. It was an area, for all of us who are gray-haired will remember, you couldn't see the ocean, for the automobile repair shops along that avenue in front of El Estero and running all the way into town prior to the tunnel. No, not at all. The Japanese and the Sicilians intermingled very, very socially. In fact, the Japanese spoke Sicilian before they spoke English, because they not only were involved in the fishing industry and agriculture too, but they used the diamonds out there for social activities. So they were together. But I never found anything that suggested that they were deeply associated with laundry.
Thank you, Kent. That's very interesting info. Thank you for the mini history lesson. Back to you, Tony, please, Mr. Lombardo.
Unless the council has any other questions, I'd like to reserve the remainder of my time for comment after the public testimony.
Yes, of course. So are there any questions for the Mr. Lombardo, Mr. Seavey at this point from the council? Seeing none. Nat, let's open it up to public comment, please.
Let's see if we have any public comment. And if anyone is calling in, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Otherwise, I only have hands raised, which we have from Mr. Lombardo and Ms. Clovis. Oh, we do have one here. Last 3 digits is 185. If you could please unmute yourself by dialing *6. We can then take your comment. Please dial *6, and we can hear you with the last 3 digits 185. Okay. Well, I'm not sure if they're following along here, but they've raised their hand, and to be clear, they have not unmuted themselves, so we cannot hear them. Otherwise, okay. There are no other public comments.
All right, let's just wait
Mr.
a
Mayor?
moment. All right, so we're not getting, and 185 just disappeared from my screen.
Mr. Mayor, if I might add one more comment, I just thought of.
Well, yeah, just wait a moment, Tony, until I close public comment, please.
Sure.
Yeah, then do we have any, it looks like our one potential public commenter was not able to come through.
Yeah, can we connect with the person who wanted to show 3 slides? Kim, is that possible with you?
Yeah.
For you?
And then 185 is raising their hand again. I mean, we can try them one more time.
Let's try them again, please.
Try it.
Okay.
Might be the same person, yes.
Yeah. So whoever is out there on 185, please dial *6 on your telephone so that you can unmute yourself. *6. Yeah, unfortunately, we're not getting them to unmute themselves. Oh, and then they just hung up. So they're no longer with us on the line.
Okay, well, if they do try again, of course, we'll try to accommodate them, whoever they are. Okay, so our respected city manager, Hans Uslar, was talking about someone who wanted to share slides, or would that be done by our planning department, or would that be public comment?
Yeah, that would have been basically the person that wanted to call in and comment, shared 3 slides with us that we were supposed to show during the 3-minute period. Kim, is that correct?
Correct. I have the 3 slides if you want me to show them.
Well, let me ask our very responsible city attorney, would that be the sort of thing that we do normally? We aren't, emails, for example, go into the public record, but they aren't shared at these meetings because we would be going forever. So procedurally, is there any problem with sharing these 3 slides, or should it be part of public comment?
It should be a part of the public comment.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, right? Okay. Why don't we do this? I'll close the public hearing comment part of this meeting. And again, if 185 does try one more time, we will try one more time. But meanwhile, Mr. Lombardo, back to you for final comments. Rebuttal?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing I neglected to mention in terms of the future of this property, it was an industrial laundry, of course, and having been an industrial laundry, there's a fairly significant opportunity for additional housing and additional commercial space in this location because of the amount of water credit this property maintains. So the reuse of this property could be a fairly significant improvement to the city of Monterey, because I think it probably goes without saying that there's not likely ever to be another industrial laundry in this building, and nor is the liquor store anything unique to the city of Monterey. So I neglected to mention before that this property has some very significant potential for future reuse because of its former use that I think also is going to be important to the city. So thank you. We agree with the staff recommendation. We respectfully request that you support the staff recommendation and the work of the 3 very excellent historians that did the deep dive on this property and have researched it to the nth degree to conclude that it's not historical. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lombardo. So we'll come back to the council then for discussion and deliberation. One of the things I'll start off with, I recently watched a planning commission meeting, and the planning commission was looking at an appeal from another commission, and they were very sensitive to the point of they didn't want to the semblance that they were just overturning some of their friends. And the de novo, the way it's situated is it's a new hearing. So however we go, whether we uphold or deny the appeal, we certainly respect and appreciate our HPC and our planning commission members. And so we want to, and I've been in the 5-0 club, I've been in the 1-4 club, so on votes over 40 years. And so none of this is personal, it's always what we all think is the best for the city that we love. Saying that, I'm going to ask Kim one more time. The council has new information that the planning commission did not have, and I believe that was the peer review by Ms. Clovis, as I understand it.
Correct. That's accurate.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Allen, unmute and start us off.
Yeah, I guess I have another question. So, I mean, as I'm looking at this, I'm loath and, kind of cautious about wanting to overturn both the HPC and the Planning Commission. And I think they were right to sort of want an independent review. We have that. I think the fact that the building, half of the building is effectively a 1960s building is, worth consideration. But on the other hand, when I look at the facade of the French Laundry, that to me just intuitively looks historical. I'm wondering, Kim, if there's a way for us to approve the appeal, but maybe it's a different venue. Maybe it's in the future if this building is remodeled. I would want to have that front facade retained in some way if possible. So I guess I'm wondering if there's a way for us to do that, to both support the appeal, but also, I don't know, provide some protection for at least the facade.
Alan, can I ask a question about your
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, sure.
Are you talking about the building that has the actual sign, French Laundry, or are you talking about the building next to it? Because it's two different looking buildings.
I'm talking about the 1928.
Yeah, the one that's on the sidewalk, correct?
I'm not sure which
Yeah.
is, to me, they both
Yeah, that's
look.
the one.
Yeah, it's the left-hand side one.
I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure because there are two different buildings, really, when you look at it.
Right.
One's off the street and one's on the street. So I just wanted to make sure I'm on the same page you are, Alan.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things on that, Alan, was when the very low affordable senior housing was built on Van Buren, one of the things that was city-owned property, it's different, but one of the things that we did ask for and gave direction was some kind of display, which is in the lobby, just acknowledging the homes that used to be there historically and so on. And I know the Cooper Malera has also done a display of some of the original things that were there. So I think we could probably suggest this going forward, that be included. I don't think we could require it, but certainly it's a very nice request that the applicant going forward may want to consider.
If, oh, I'm sorry, if you wouldn't mind my interruption.
No, go ahead.
Sure.
The action before you is more narrow. It is, either the property is on the list or off the list. And so we really can't overreach that
Yes,
lane.
got it. It's
I
just
guess
a-
we could say, gee, wouldn't it be nice if
There you go.
they
Sure,
heard us?
you can make a statement of your desires, but it's, that would be all it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Any more thoughts? Are we ready to move on it, Dan? Councilmember Dan?
Let me just make one comment on, when I looked at the two pictures, one of when it was in 1928, the facade, and then the one where they moved the doors, they added the windows. To me, it's two separate facades. And the one that's currently in place doesn't seem like it's the integrity has been changed, as several of the it's already been spoken. So for me, the building is already changed to where it doesn't look like the 1928 building anymore. So that's why I don't see it as being as historical as some people think it is, because it's already changed.
Thank you. Councilmember Tyler.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting to be called on so soon. No, I agree with my colleagues here. I think it's important for us to look at the fact that we've had 3 experts in this area that have validated the reasoning, I think, for the direction that it looks like we're going to be taking here. And I think it's important to think about this to the extent that the city of Monterey really values its history. I mean, we have a body made up of residents that specifically look at things like this. So I think it kind of really speaks to how important this is as a value to the city. And so that being said, I think we have to be careful when we use this historical designation as well, because if we just use it for everything when it doesn't really have the historical value and significance, it takes away from those opportunities and projects that really do have it, and we really want to be able to shine that light of the historical experience. So I hear what Alan's saying, and if there was something that we could do to have some kind of plaque or something, I think that would be a great way of identifying. But I'm in support of the appeal.
Okay, Councilmember Ed, you were next, please.
Yes. These are always fascinating because it's such a deep dive into the history of the building and the principles of it. But to the matter of the motion, I'm going to support the motion because it does not appear to me to hold on to any of the historical value that meets the criteria. But I just wanted to note some of the things in the document that's Toffner Lane behind it. So the building was built by John Toffner, and Toffner Lane it's an entirely light industrial area with the credit union right behind it. So it has significance in the industrial age of the 20s, 30s, and 40s and beyond into Monterey. However, the area looks like it's ripe for a refresh with the current use because it just doesn't fit the criteria. And going back through the documents, I wanted to take note of the language that comes through with the competing historical, I'll call them experts, and I appreciate their ability to weave through something that's complicated. But one of the comments was, "What do you call this period piece?" And it was interesting that one of them called it eclectic, and the other one had a different term. And I highlighted them because I thought it was interesting that one was called a Spanish colonial revival by one of our experts that we listened to in the documents, and the other was calling it a Spanish eclectic style. And so there could be an argument here between the two of them about what to call it, but there was no difference of opinion between all three of the experts that said that it basically had lost its historical significance, and there were really minor remnants that were still remaining on the building. Mr. Toffner in the documents also, it's identified that he came from Wisconsin, went to Oregon, then settled in Monterey, lived on Monroe Street, and actually participated in designing and building the Monterey High School, Pacific Grove Library, and First National Bank, and the Holman Building. So he had a significant career. So although the building that he built no longer holds on to its historical definition, I think that there should be some consideration of the person's work with the name. So I think there's a way to honor the person's name in the future. When you look at Monterey High School, I drive by it every day. Dan, you worked there for many years. So there's a lot of significance to the name. So with that, I just want to say that I concur that this should not be deemed to be historical, support the motion. But I just wanted to say that does not go by lightly. Reading all the documents and trying to study and understand the qualifications for this, it just no longer qualifies because it's been remodeled so many times and lost its historical integrity. But kudos to the man that was here, that worked with his team to place his legacy here with many buildings that we all know. So when you drive by Holman's Highway or Holman's Building, or you drive by the Monterey High School, you can think of John Toffner.
If I can add on to
Clyde, you're muted.
Okay. Yeah, there isn't a motion yet, but it's pretty clear where we're going. Councilmember Dan?
Yeah, if I could just add on to Ed's comments. Even though it doesn't meet the criteria of a famous person in Monterey, yeah, I think the Toffner family would probably disagree with that because of the amount of work and that he has done on the peninsula. Yeah. And the people that own the property are on now, and they're listening to us. Right. And there's a good possibility that maybe they'll take in account. And I think you make a really good point for the historic value of just at least the area and that street. Thank you, Ed, for bringing that up.
Yeah. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that I'm turning back to see the right language here, rejecting the or supporting the appeal.
Yeah.
And deeming that it is not historical.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? Councilmember Allen?
Yeah, I'm going to support the motion because I do believe the integrity of the building has been compromised, but I do believe John J. Toffner was historically relevant. And that bothers me a little bit that the historical reviews didn't find that, because I think Ed made a really strong case there. Those are historically significant contributions, but I'm going to support the motion, and in the future, I think if that building is redesigned, I would support having some sort of historical memorial there recognizing him.
You mean like the Toffner building?
Exactly.
Well, and I hope we can hold on to the Toffner Lane name. But I think I've been in that building, and when you look around, it's been cut up so many ways and so many times that I wished it had been preserved better from its original, but obviously in the 60s, it was repurposed multiple times and just significantly changed it. So that's the reason why I make the motion.
Right, we got it, and thank you. Again, I think council's very cognizant of our history. And I believe for me, the difference is HPC and Planning Commission, I think, did not have the advantage of a third impartial, quote unquote, peer review. And I think that's a practice that our staff's going to start doing. They did that on a different item, and that was very helpful to the Planning Commission. So I think that extra evidence enables me to support the motion. So thank you, Kim and staff. Hans, and roll call, please.
Councilmember Albert,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Williamson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffa,
Yes.
and Mayor Roberson.
Yes. Okay, our next public appearance item is to recognize June as LGBTQ Pride Month and authorize Pride flag display at City Hall for the month of June. And what I'd like to do is turn it over to our respected city manager, Hans Uslar, because the staff report I thought was very well written. I'll invite him to share that. Then I would like to ask Council Member Williamson to share his thoughts, because last year he brought this to us and we very much appreciate that. And then I'll share some of the resolution as the final presentation, then open it up to the public. So with that, we'll go to our respected city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for framing it so nicely. June is the month that is being dedicated as the LGBTQ plus Pride Month, and it goes actually back to June 28, 1969, when there was a riot by gay community members against a police raid that took place at Stonewall in New York City, I believe in Greenwich Village. And the date marks this event, and 28th of June is basically the commemorative date of the Stonewall riot, and tracing back to those days where the gay community objected against the police raid and also became a factor in speaking up for their rights. LGBTQ plus has evolved, and as the mayor pointed out, we recognized last year also the LGBTQ plus community, and with that we are proposing again to recognize June as the LGBTQ plus month, as well as raising a flag at City Hall. And I want to give credit also again to Councilmember Williamson, who brought this whole topic forward, and that concludes my brief agenda report.
Thank you, Hans. And let's turn it over to our friend and colleague, Councilmember Tyler. And thank you once again for bringing this to us. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Hans and city staff, for the support in bringing this forward to the council today. What's interesting about Pride Month is that it's one of those celebrations that we share around the world, and that says it says something about the beauty of the queer community and accepting everybody for who they are. And so and some may not know, I will use queer a couple of times. I think it's just another way of being able to describe the LGBTQ plus community. And sometimes it's just easier to say, so I'll use it at moments here. But obviously we've been affected by the pandemic, and we're going into the second year now where we're not going to be hosting an in-person Pride, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be taking these opportunities to celebrate. And so these are just one of those small ceremonial opportunities that we have to celebrate Pride Month. And so I appreciate Hans's defining some of the history associated with Pride Month and what led to June being designated as Pride Month. But I think it's also important to understand that it wasn't just Stonewall. I think in a lot of ways it was the catalyst, but there was a lot of anti-gay legal systems in some of those which still exist. So really Pride Month is just an opportunity to recognize, celebrate our queerness. Everybody has the right to live a dignified life. And so I'm super honored to be able to, be on council, be in a position of power where I can be out and proud and walk around a community with my partner and be accepted and respected. But not everybody has those same rights and opportunities. And obviously there's still a lot of work to do. There are conflicts to accept all, even within the queer community. Much work is being done to expand the rights of those, particularly in the trans community. So more simply, the LGBTQ plus community continues to fight for equal rights to start families, to get married, adopt children, fight discrimination, hate speech, and the right to simply exist as they are. So I'll just kind of end with a few asks. We need more allies, and think about using this month to become more educated. It's also important for us to recognize all the folks out there that are still closeted. For those that don't know, I am a co-chair for Monterey Peninsula Pride. We started a nonprofit in 2017. And so we're the organization that is hosting Pride every year. And in the first year, in 2017, somebody handed me a note that was from a student at a local school. And I read it aloud during the first Pride. But this individual wrote a note saying, "Hey, I wish I could be there, but my parents won't let me come."
Remember that?
So this is something that people still live with today. I mean, this is real. This is what we're fighting for. I'm part of the resolution tonight is also the request to raise the pride flag in Monterey. And I believe this is the first time. Can anybody correct me if I'm wrong? So I think this is a moment to celebrate in and of itself. I'm super excited about that opportunity, and I appreciate my colleagues' support in getting this to happen. And then finally, I'll end here with just be kind to one another. We're all different, but we're more alike than not. And with that, we should celebrate our differences, because what would life be like if we were all the same? I love you all.
Thank you very much, Tyler. We appreciate you bringing this to us and your story. And looking at our resolution, I want to make sure, okay, here we go. Yes, I'm unmuted. Back to the resolution. And as the city of Monterey does recognize and proclaim the month of June 2021 as Pride Month, we join a lot of municipalities, cities all over the country, and not only supporting the rights of the LGBTQ liberation movement and community, but the rights of all citizens to experience equality and freedom from discrimination. I think there's some really good points here from the proclamation I will continue to share. And our nation was founded on the principle that every individual has infinite dignity and worth. And the Monterey City Council calls upon the people of this municipality to embrace this principle and to work to eliminate prejudice everywhere it exists. And society at large increasingly supports the LGBTQ equality. And it's essential to acknowledge the need for education and awareness, vital to the end of discrimination and prejudice. And the city commends the bravery and courage of all those in the LGBTQ community that face adversity, and various forms of violence. And it's very important not only to stand up to any discrimination, but all of it. I'm reminded that during the Asian community and Pacific Islander rally, the need for all of us to stand up, not be silent. So as a final whereas, Pride Month's influences and awareness and provide support and advocacy for cities across the world, including here. And it is an opportunity to take action and engage in dialogue to strengthen alliances, build acceptance, and advance equal rights. And so the Monterey City Council is hopefully going to pass this resolution, and very pleased to declare this Pride Month and to fly the flag as indicated near City Hall. So I just wanted to share some of the highlights of that. And as we know, equal rights is for everyone. We have the Asian community. I listened to President Biden today, who gave a very moving speech about Greenwood and Tulsa. If you don't, the second part was more political, but if you listen to the first part of his speech and how horrific that was, and the president's call for the end of this, and it's all a fabric that we need to work on together. So with that, do we have public comment, Nat?
We do, let's see, we do not have public comment at this time, but no public comment, no hands raised, sir.
Okay, back to the council for a motion on the resolution, please.
I move that we approve the resolution as presented.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? All right, seeing none, I think Hans and Tyler did such a great job. We don't need to add anything. So roll call, please.
Councilmember Hoffa,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Williamson,
Yes.
Councilmember Albert,
Yes.
and Mayor Roberson.
Yes. And
Thank you.
let's
all.
go to council comments. My council comment is I'm going to be out of here very shortly. The Monterey High School graduation starts in 20 minutes. We'll have to sneak in the back door. I was very honored to be invited by the superintendent and board to attend that on behalf of the city. And that's it for me. And it's an exciting time out there with all of our graduates. And let's hope they have a beautiful, wonderful world to graduate to. Council comments? Councilmember Dan?
Yeah, I just have one comment. I sit on the Monterey Regional Waste Management District, and I just wanted to bring up, we have one board member that is retiring from the board, and that's Gary Bales.
Oh, yeah.
Gary is the former city manager at Pacific Grove. And the only reason I bring that up is that he's been sitting on the board for 52 years.
Oh, my.
Which is amazing to me. If you can imagine sitting on the council for 52 years, that is a long time for public service. And I want to congratulate Gary. And I won't say anything, Clyde, but congratulations to Gary on his commitment to our district. And I just wanted to bring that up to the council. And that's
Thank you so much. Charlie Benson was a member of the waste management district for many years, and they named the entrance after him too. So hopefully they'll do something for Gary. I remember when he was the city manager of Pacific Grove.
They did name the boardroom after him.
Nice, thank you. Other council comments?
I'll just say congratulations to all the high school graduates in Monterey County, and especially to Monterey. And Dan, you didn't say it, but I'll say go Doors. And congratulations on them, and wishing them luck, and also our generation, young and old, to be in a position to help support them as they move forward in their lives. In whatever way they need it, reach out to us. We want to see you successful. Congratulations all.
Go Doors.
There you go. Thank you. Councilmember Allen?
Yeah, was it last week? It was the fourth Tuesday in May. I think it was the 25th. Participated with the Monterey Kiwanis Club in a park maintenance project And this is going to be an ongoing project. So if there's anyone listening who would be interested in joining us, you don't have to join the Monterey Kiwanis Club to participate, but basically we're working with city staff and maintaining the park along the rec trail, kind of between our sister city park and the basketball courts.
Nice.
So our next event will be June 22nd. So they're always the fourth Tuesday from 2:30 to 4. And if you want more information, people can contact me at hoffa@monterey.org, or you can visit montereykiwanis.org.
Very nice. Thank you. Councilmember Tyler.
I just want to thank you all for your support on the resolution there. Thank you.
Our pleasure. City managers reports.
Very, very briefly, today marks the start of the summer reading program. The summer reading program is very important. Kids can sign up and will receive awards at the end of that program. It ends on July 31st. Please, if you're interested to have your children or grandchildren sign up for that, go to the library's website and start the summer reading program together with us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, again, we thank you, council, staff, public, for making this another really worthwhile, informative meeting. I do appreciate you all. We're adjourned.
Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
I loved
Good
Karen's
night.
wave.
So we don't have closed session, is that correct?
Not today.
Okay, thanks.
But Alan, if you want to stay here, we can make something up for you.
Bye.
Not unless you're bringing me some food, Ed.
No.